victory over Goliath, this great event, things really started moving for David. Well, and I don't blame David for thinking this, but there are some different thoughts. When he did this great act in his life and started moving forward, when he entered into service of the Lord and struck down Goliath, I thought when I was younger that life was here and that it was just a slow and steady increase in goodness and wealth and it's just this nice upward momentum with life, yeah? And David was in this position where he had done it. He was a tweenie. He was a young teen, maybe right at 20 at the worst. And so he got everything all at one time. He got acclaim. He got the supermodel girl, the wife of the king. He picked up wealth. He picked up acclaim. He picked up recognition. And he started to have one success after another in battle. Oh, he was rolling. David was rolling. This was a good part of his life. But what happens to young people that get everything they ever wanted at a young age? Money, power, recognition. What normally happens even today? It still happens. We watch this on reality TV shows. We look at social media. We see what happens. And for David, it begins this process that God is going to come in and do a little something in David's life. He really is. God will begin to remove all the crutches of David. And what do I mean by that? God is going to remove everything that David holds on to for his, security blankets, the pieces that he holds on to greater than the Lord himself. He's going to take those pieces out of his life so that there's nothing left but God for him. He is going to show David for who he is, who he truly is, and teach him a few lessons along the way. God begins this process. And though we're talking about a young man right now, I assure you that this happens throughout our life, every bit of our life. When we move out of the house for the first time and really have to live, when we enter into a new part of the world that we never thought we would go to, when we go into retirement for the first time I say, when we go into that retirement and we take that deep breath and go, oh my gosh, this is good, but then right after that breath exhale, you're like, now what do I do? There is this change when we lose something we love greatly, when we live in a house for 40, 50 years and then all of a sudden are told we have to move to a small apartment. There are these points throughout our life where something has to change. We need to sink deeper. The connection to God becomes all the more important, and it happens throughout. There is no nice, clean line of growth. It looks like this. It's all jagged and messed up, our life. It really is. And if we admit that, David is going through this right now. David had position, and now he lost it. He had a wife, and he lost her. He had a friend, and he lost him. He had self-respect, and he lost that. And if you want to know how bad it got, go to 1 Samuel 21 at the bottom and find out how bad it got. There are kids in the room, so I'll just skip it. But go to 1 Samuel 21 at the bottom and find out how much his self-respect amounted to. It was bad. He had a wise counselor. He had some sort of help. But now we learned last week that Samuel died. And then God begins this exposing David business where we see the anger, we see the quick decision making, we see the lack of experience, of wisdom that comes from time with God and life, sinking us and teaching us. We see this start to be drawn out. And David's just getting moved from one place to another. It's just going crazy with him. But know that God is working with him. When David entered into God's service and moved in, well, God began, we hear this all the time downtown, urban renewal, right? Urban renewal. I don't know how they're going to fit one more thing down there, but they're going to keep cramming it in down there. Renewal. God begins this internal renewal. It may or may not look the same on the outside, but the inside is truly getting some new work done. This internal renewal process that loosens David's grip as it will ours, just loosens David's grip on anything else for him, and sinks him deeper into God to trust him alone. Well, a little catch up. We go from glory. David is like, he's on the cover of everything. He is trending. It's just blowing up. David is just blowing up. And then all of this badness begins to happen. And God does not need to make any of this stuff happen. He doesn't cause us to go through much because we don't need the help. We get our heads stuck on our own fences. God, though, is there with us when we walk through here, but David loses everything. He ends up living in caves throughout the desert areas, and it's made of a lot of sandstone, and so it would wash out caves almost as big as this room we're in now. It's pretty amazing. And so people who were on the run, who had left their families, who were desperate, who were trying to find another way, would end up collecting in these caves that we're talking about. Well, he's being hunted by Saul, constantly hunted by Saul. This is when it really began. Well, Saul was slowly losing his mind, who was the king at the time. But people were chanting this: Saul is killing his hundreds, but David is killing his thousands. So how does that affect the pride with an established war leader? It started getting to him pretty quickly. And so there was always this weird relationship between the two of them, him, Saul, knowing what David's future was going to be. And so eventually Saul would pursue him for his life. And so David is on the run. And as part of the ways that he would make a living, he would collect with these other men of fortune, these paramilitary men, and they would get together and they would patrol the border. We hear about this in the scriptures kind of a little bit before ours. So David and his men, about 600 in number, kept moving from place to place. David stayed in the desert strongholds and to the hills of the desert of Ziph. Day after day, Saul searched for him, but God did not give David into his hands. And so Saul is on his back constantly. And if he catches him, he's not going to honor any ordination or anything. If he catches David, he's dead. He's done. And so he's after him hard. And so David needs to find a way to live. This map is kind of small. I understand that. But what I want you to see, this is basically the entire map of what we would say is the Bible sort of events. There's a little bit above, a little bit below, but this is pretty much the whole of it. Do you see all the different routes David was taking to run? He would go back and forth and move and groove and work through the different areas. It was all over the place trying to find a way to live, learn the lessons of God, and find a way. And so he was moving all over the place. And this one's a little better, but there's a red line on the left-hand side there. That's where the border was. That's where the kingdom of Saul ended, and that's where the Palestinians were. And they would be there, and they would raid across to steal crops and take lives and take grain and provisions from the Hebrew people. And so, as part of a service, these 600 sort of paramilitary people, this would be David's group, would patrol that border and protect their land from any invaders. And in trade for doing that, they would get a little bit of, little tribute, a little bit of the extra, so that they could eat and live and continue this. What happened was that David and the 600 men got really good at warring, got really good. I mean, they were the Delta Force. They were the special ops. You didn't mess with this group of people. You just didn't do it. And so they got really good at what they did. David learned a lot of lessons along this route. And so we have David going through all this, and it catches up to our story today. Saul finds out that he's down in the desert of Ziph. And so he sends 3,000 chosen men of Israel, 3,000 of his best, chosen to hunt David out. He takes 3,000 of them against 600 of David down the hill, right? Saul made his camp, and when David heard, I can't include all the scriptures, so we have to move around a little. When David heard and saw that Saul had followed him to where he was, he then sent out scouts and learned that Saul had definitely arrived where they were. And so David is here's Saul again. He's coming, he's close, he's right in my backyard. What's going to happen? So he sent out his scouts to figure out a little bit more, what's going to happen here. what's he here for? Like he really needs to know. I zoomed in a little bit, but this has happened twice where they got so close together that David and Saul probably could have taken each other's lives. The first time was in Samuel 24, just to the upper right hand next to the Dead Sea. Well, I'll let you read about that in 24. But the second time comes up to us now, where we're going to be reading and looking at where David is right there in the wilderness of Moab, or we're getting really close to Carmel. We're in this little area where David is patrolling and banding, and now Saul and David are right up against each other again. They're right up against each other. So when David heard this, he set out and went to the place where Saul had camped. And they're really stealthy. They've learned how to hide. They know how to move. They're swift. They're quiet. And so they get to this larger camp. He saw there that Saul and Abner, son of Ner, the commander of the army, had lain down. And Saul was lying inside the camp with the army encamped around him. And so there would be 3,000 or so men encircled. And of course, you put the precious thing in the middle. So there in the middle would be Saul. And he's looking at all this affair. He's really been hewn. He knows what he's doing. He's taking a look at how they're set up. And so he asks around, anyone want to come with me? Down here. Man, it's kind of a fool's errand if you think about it. I don't know if I would have gone with David. But he wants to go down. And so Abishai, decides to go with him. I'll go with you, he says. And so they start down to this camp. So they went to the army by night, and there was Saul lying asleep inside the camp with his spear stuck in the ground near his head. Abner and the soldiers were lying around him. Now, God had put them into a deep sleep, so they were able to come in and stand right there. And his friend, as they're standing right over Saul, Saul is right there. The problem is right there. David, there's the problem. Fix the problem. He doesn't care about you. He's not honoring the blessing on you. If he sees you, he would kill you. They just went back and forth about this in chapter 24. Kill him. Kill him, David. Be done with it. Matter of fact, you don't have to kill him. I'll kill him. The spear's right there. Today, God has delivered your enemy into your hands. Now let me pin him to the ground with one thrust. Now we have kids in the room. But this would have been quick. Can you imagine the image of a spear doing that? I mean, going 3 or 4 inches into the ground below him. This was going to be tough. It was going to be hard. It would have been the end of it. And then that last little bit, which is why I love the writer of Samuel. I won't strike him twice. I just need one shot, and it will be done. That's pretty amazing. We have this spear, which is no joke. It's sitting right there. Come on, the spear is sitting right next to him, David. What more signs do you need? Get him. I'll do it for you. Get him, David. Get him. What is that feeling inside of us when we feel like we've been wronged? Why do we feel like that as human beings? When someone has mistreated us, when we're given ill return for good, when we think we should be honored and we're not, when someone cuts the bushes and they shouldn't because they're the neighbor, why do we feel what we feel? And it isn't just a little bit of a feeling, it's like the worst of them. It's like anger. How dare they say that about me? How dare they not honor me? They offended me. And we feel hate, we feel angry. And it's still in us. This is that old Adam, that old Eve. It's that brokenness in humanity. When our name is even hinted on, when someone just speaks ill of us and we hear it third party, there's this feeling that happens inside of us. What is that? Why do we react this way? I would say, everyone, if you've ever felt that way, reach up, grab that spear, and solve the problem. Take your strength and fix it. It's so hard not to. It's so hard not to. I just had an event this week, and it's something that you have to work on your whole life. I don't believe this feeling ever goes away. You just respond to it differently. It's someone that I have poured a lot into, someone that has been given much either visibly or invisibly, has worked through a period in their life, and this person has completely rejected any thought or any idea that I had any part of it and walks right on by me. Now, that's right? I mean, I feel the feeling like, you know what? That same power that lifted is the same power that can crush, kiddo. What is that feeling? That anger that turns to revenge in us, like, you have no idea what I could do to you right now. None. But thank goodness I had good leaders and mentors around me when I was younger. I had bad ones, don't get me wrong. But there were a few leaders that allowed me to scrape them, that allowed me to wound them a bit so that I would learn a lesson. And I thank them for that. And of course, this happens the very week I'm reading these scriptures. Again, this is something we deal with our whole life. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, fine, I get it. I know why I'm with David in the dark in a prairie now too. Yeah? Pick up that spear, folks. Strike. The old Adam, the old Eve, strike. It's your right. See, this is what's happening. This renewal, God's internal renewal breaks through to humble and guide us even when conflict and arrogance and pride and anger take hold of us. And it's not easy. I do not envy the Lord that He does this work because it's hard. And you know what? The feelings don't ever seem to go away. They're always there, but am I gonna take those up and strike? Am I gonna do this now? Now that it is my time to lead, my time to nurture, my time to help, am I going to swing? We see this happening with David, this internal renewal going on in our life. David is standing right there. His friend is willing to blow, to only take one, and it'll be done. I promise you, he ain't getting up. Let's do it. In order to overcome these feelings, you must be saying yes so strongly to something that you can say no to this. That something I've learned cannot come from anybody else. Really, no man can tell another man what to do. Who are you to tell me to do anything, you broken down sinners? Who are you to tell me to do anything? I've learned that this must come from something greater than ourselves, something greater than humanity. People call it a conscience, people call it all sorts of weirdness. It is God that comes into our world. He breaks through our world and delivers goodness to us. In that moment of passion, when the old Adam, the old Eve have their strongest power, take it. There's the spear. It's right there. Just do it. And how often have we? The temptation is so strong. It takes immense force to hold back and do what's really right. And the only chance we've got to not do that is when God breaks through to our world and delivers the goods. Whether we've been taught this by our parents, as His Spirit works in us, as we deal with this time and time again, as we see ourselves and the people in front of us, it's the only hope we've got to break the cycle, to get in and truly do what's right. Well, why are we sitting here with David then? Why am I stuck in the middle of the night looking over the top of Saul with David? It's because we're all dealing with that too. What's God going to do to us? What is God going to work in us? Well, Paul reminds us that this isn't some Saul thing, some David thing. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but be careful to do what is right in everyone's eyes. You know how difficult that is? That's not going to happen probably for us, even if we tried our whole life. But it shows us what right looks like, that we aspire to. Does that sound like that's a natural reaction or something that we would do without being taught that? Oh no, nothing on this screen is something that we're born with. It's quite the opposite. But God has broken through our world through the life of Jesus Christ, through the words of Paul and the Spirit, to deliver to us again today. We're called to something else. We're called to something else. And boy, David was learning something very important from God. I mean, just in front of this scripture, David hadn't learned his lesson yet, and Abigail's husband insulted him, and immediately he got angry and said, 400 of my best, we're going to go just take him out. And they're on the move. They didn't wait a minute. They're moving. And Abigail, this genius, this beautiful, intelligent Abigail, had David purring like a kitten. Thank goodness, when they came into contact. Otherwise, it would have been messy, and David would not have learned his lesson. And he swore to her, thank goodness you came to me and taught me this. I can't act this way. This is wrong. Well, God begins this internal renewal by teaching us a few things about ourselves and everyone. And he taught David and shows us a few little pieces. First of all, because people are deprived, and I'm going to say because the human nature is deprived, it is broken, expect to be mistreated. So instead of raising your hand, I'm going to do the opposite. If you haven't been mistreated in your life, raise your hand. Why don't we do that? I don't see anyone raising their hand. It's going to happen, intentionally or unintentionally. We're all broken people, and someone's going to offend you. It may have happened on the way here, driving. That's why I took the cross off my car. I didn't want anyone to get the wrong ideas. So I don't have any markings on my car anymore, just in case. It could happen on your drive here. It's amazing. It's going to happen. You just know it. We can be mistreated, and oftentimes are. And because mistreatment is inevitable, anticipate the feeling of revenge. It's in there. And what's kind of funny about it all, this is how this kind of preaching works. As soon as we're brought aware of that's what's happening, you almost feel more. It amplifies the feeling. That's just how this kind of preaching works when we point the fingers and do these things. That's not what I'm about. But know that that feeling will always be there. Those feelings tell you something's wrong, and you need to approach it differently, right? When you have those feelings, you know you can't keep doing what you're doing. You need to step back and figure this out. And of course, the last little bit, because revenge is predictable, the old Adam, the old Eve is going to be offended a lot. Because it's predictable, we need to refuse to fight in the flesh. We need to be able to go, you know what? Ugh. And that's really the difference I've seen with soldiers, between great leaders, between others. They have these feelings, but in the midst of those feelings, they're able to operate. They're still able to function according to how they've been trained or what they believe. And that's what we're trying to do as we come together to church today, as we learn more about God, as God comes into our life through these life events. We're just trying to learn to lessen our grip on all those other things and sink deeper. We're always going to have these feelings. Well, what's David do? The last time this happened, he debated back and forth. He was trying to work this through. He didn't even blink an eye this time. Don't destroy him. In our text today, no, don't hurt him. Don't you lay a hand on him. There was no hesitation, just coming off of Abigail and all that scene. No. I've learned that. Don't do it. As surely as the Lord lives, he said, the Lord himself will deal with him. Did we not read that? The Lord is to handle this. The Lord himself will strike him. Either his time will come and he will die, or he will go into battle and perish. But the Lord forbid that I should lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. I'm not going to do ill for ill. I know what's right. But trust me, this isn't some perfect David who all just knows. He has been taught time and time again in the scriptures before this, through lesson after lesson after lesson, to finally be in a place where he can say no. But he isn't perfect yet because of what follows. So if you were going to handle this perfectly, you were right over the top of Saul, and you say no. If you're going to handle this perfectly, what would you have done? Just walk away. What does David do? So he's getting there, but what does David do? He still wants a treasure that he can flaunt later. And he's already tried this once before. I don't know why he thinks it'll work again. He grabs a few things. He grabs a spear and water and walks away. You know, I think my kids do that with my car keys. They just take them and then I wake up and go, what's going on? I must have misplaced them. He's still going to hold on to those. So he's still a work in progress, okay? This is what I love about Samuel, the writer of Samuel. He's still kind of, he's getting there. He's definitely getting better. And so there we are. And again, Paul reminds us that just as God is breaking through to David, Jesus is going to break through to our lives, changing us in profound ways. This is not natural to us. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, because be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everybody. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord. And you want to know why? Because we're probably deserving of it more than the person we want to lay on, right? God's like, I wouldn't be too worried about getting revenge because there's like 30 people lined up to take some on you. So why don't you leave all that to me, and I'll deal with it. On the contrary, it says, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. And doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. I wonder why that line is in there. It could be, this is just me, I think hearing all this is so unnatural to us that they just wanted to throw a little bit of encouragement that it would bring a little bit of pain to someone, that give us a little courage to do it. Now, when we started, we realized that's not why we do it. But maybe that was in there just to encourage us to try. And then verse 21, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. This is not our natural habitat, is it? This is not our natural surroundings. Well, when we enter into his service, God moves in and begins an internal renewal process that rips away everything but himself and exposes us for what we are. This happens at all ages of our life. We make our own trouble, don't we? God does not make these bad things happen in your life, not even. But you know what? He's there for you. He's going to be around you. He's going to lift you up and sink you. He really is. Further into him, loosening our grip on this world and the need of ourselves. But I'm going to be honest with you. That's what makes us who we are in this church. It's going to be painful. There is no prosperity doctrine laced in this sermon. There is no promise that life will only be good to you all the time. Know that life is what it is, that God is with you always through it. But know with the help of the Spirit, the result is going to be beautiful. It really is. And even if the struggle continues to our passing, we have a Jesus Christ who is won for us eternally. And in the end, it will be beautiful, I promise. Because he promises me. Amen.